CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success.
All right, we're here at Streamline Asset Management User Conference. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. We got a bunch of sponsors of this event. It includes Hexagon and a bunch of others. Today, we are talking to Paul Daoust of SCIO Asset Management Incorporated. Paul and I, we're talking today. We talked a bit yesterday. We met a couple of years ago, and we just somehow schedules that didn't work out, whatever, everything's happening. Paul, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. We're going to jump right in. There's a topic that you're passionate about, that you think well, I think you're right. That's really important to the industry as a whole, and it's a little bit different take on things. So I want to ask you out of the gate, what is this concept of the industry having an asset management identity crisis?
Yeah. Asset management as kind of, in some ways we've been doing asset management for years and years and years. Only recently, in the last 7-8 years, has there been kind of a whole profession and formalization of asset management develop. It's underpinned, of course, by ISO 55000 family of standards. But out in industry today, whether it's industrial or infrastructure or even government like municipalities and whatnot, everybody still has kind of a different definition of what asset management means, right? So, and it varies from kind of strategic to tactical, from just maintenance and reliability. In fact, a friend of mine kind of says that to some organizations, asset management means fix my maintenance, whereas my kind of flavor of asset management is much more strategic and holistic, or as I heard yesterday, tall and wide, right? And we're at an EAM conference here, user conference, and so that's kind of squarely in the asset management sphere. But there's those tools and solutions do a lot to help our operations and maintenance and reliability. But those are 3 of 40 subjects in the broad, tall and wide arena that is asset management. So, my chosen area of arena of expertise is kind of in the stuff that's around maintenance and reliability and around the EAM space, but it's very complementary to it. And I joke that my thoughts are a little bit orthogonal to kind of a lot of how a lot of asset management is offered and delivered, because what I'm trying to do is provide a tool set for operational leadership that's based on improved decision making across the entire organization. So it's less about the data and analytics, it's less about the business processes, and it's less about our documentation, and it's more about squarely the decisions, because that's what leaders do, is they make choices, which are the decisions, that allocate their finite resources to the activities within their organization. And that's part of the definition of asset management, is the coordinated activities of the organization to create value from its assets. So I've found that decision-making specifically, and how leaders, and I define leaders very broadly, could be a people leader, senior leader, could be a technical kind of practitioner leader, but those that are responsible for contributing to and actually making those final choices in our decision making. So, in those 40 subjects, what I've done is kind of ask the question, what are the important decisions in there, and how can we provide kind of a way to assure that we can make the best decision possible at each opportunity. So that's kind of been the focus of what I do.
Now, I'm curious if that is similar to maybe a decision matrix, and then whether it is or isn't, does this actually, because I know you're going to be presenting on this, does this help someone develop it specific to their environment? In other words, does it change environment and by environment? Are there factors that have the ability to kind of ebb and flow and be adapted, or
Yes.
is it purely adopted as is?
No, good question, good question. So, a big part of it is applying the right level of rigor. No, not too much, not too little, because we don't want to, paralyze ourselves with analysis or anything like that. But there is ways, like I said, there's in those 40 subjects, there's only a finite number of decision types. So what I've done is say for each decision type, offer a canvas, and it's actually just based off the A3 problem-solving decision-making, which is like 11 by 17 sheet of paper. That's where it got its name from, and which came from the Toyota productive system. So it's a lean technique, but it's a very simple problem-solving decision-making methodology.
Plus, we know it works because if we use that as a kind of a general benchmark, I mean, it speaks for itself at this point. We won't get into all that stuff, but I always use that as an example when I look at organizations that move with excellence and they have this. It's just impressive, and I don't want to go down that wormhole, but I just want to call that out.
So that's kind of the common part of every part, because it works for big, complex problems, it works for simple problems, and you can apply different levels of rigor. You can basically just kind of run a thought exercise through it, or you can actually be discrete and do a lot of analysis. So it kind of fits any size problem solving and decision to be made. So it's very flexible in that. But what I've done is take those important decision types and offer problem frames that are already validated, and also solution models. So and some of the more complex ones, you might have multiple alternatives weighed against multiple objectives that could be financial, safety, environmental, right? So it can be very, very powerful. And I also provide guidance for each of these decision types on here's kind of the prompts you should be thinking about, questions you should ask and answer of yourself in order to kind of come up with a quality decision at the end of the day between the problem solvers and the decision makers, right? So I don't like to call it a process. It's more of a canvas that the team works on. And of course the team could be large, could be small, depending on who needs to be involved with it. So it's pretty flexible that way.
It's interesting when you describe it as a canvas, because I was thinking framework versus really structured, and you're talking about different levels of rigor that gets applied to it, right? Where do you stay tight? Where do you have enough variability to go a little bit wider and to kind of use some of your words? I do have a concern, more of a question, right? I don't know if this is a legitimate concern or not, but I just want to ask the question. There's still going to be blind spots, right?
Yeah.
And what should somebody be thinking when, they're obviously going to learn about this, or maybe they reach out to you some other time and, hey, I want to learn more about this. I'm very intrigued by it. But what should people know at different parts of the organization about why blind spots are unavoidable, but that they shouldn't be sleeping on this opportunity to learn a new way, considering that there are blind spots? Does that make sense?
No, let me answer that a couple different ways. One's kind of from a high level, and one's more tactical. So blind spots, one of the things that I think, I'm actually not just offering what I call my decision intelligence framework. There's actually an asset management system over and above that, right? So, and people struggle to understand, well, what is an asset management system, right? And it's kind of a hurdle that everybody needs to get over. I mean, if you understand the nuts and bolts and details of ISO 55000 suite of our family of standards, it kind of directs the organization to develop and manage an asset management standard, which should help you deliver, manage all the activities within the organization to deliver the strategic objectives. So the blind spot, the problem that we're actually trying to solve is what I call value leakage. And I've done a lot of operational benchmarking. And the utility I used to work for, let's just say they had very average performance. And this was performance against peers that we chose for ourselves. But when I compared our performance versus the top performers or the pace setters, there's a big difference in value delivery, right? So I kind of made it my job to understand what was going on, right? And so that's one blind spot. And it's a blind spot because a lot of leadership is not incentivized to want to see the value that they're not delivering. They are incentivized to just hit their numbers.
Right? I like that.
Right. So what that does create is a very, very much a satisficing mentality for the organization. If I just hit my numbers, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'll get promoted, and I won't get turfed, right? And look, being a leader is no easy task, right? There's not a lot of security there. We talk about. I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But on the more, so this value leakage is defined as that difference between where you are and where you could be. So compared to those top performers, and it's important to note that that is very much manageable, right? So that value leakage, if we were actually operationally excellent, which you might be a long ways from that, but by definition, you should be able to get there, right? Now, might not be easy, but you need a framework to do that, and that's where the asset management system comes in, right? The other blind spot, I would say, and this pertains specifically to the decision making, is look, there's really no way to avoid biases and blind spots, and I kind of define them as two different things. Blind spots, of course, is stuff you don't see,
right?
Usually because you're not looking for it. I mean, my motto is see, think, decide, act, and if you don't want to see, meaning if you don't want to ask what are my blind spots and see where those risks and opportunities are, then look, you're just not going to want to improve, right? But specifically for decision making, those blind spots and the biases, they can hinder, they can hinder the quality of what you want. But in the prompts that we ask, we attempt to get you to identify and manage and mitigate as much of those blind spots and the biases that go along with it. And I just simply say, look, if you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the important questions to ask? And so SCIO, my company, we've put a lot of thought into what are the questions that we should be asking when we're making decisions that provide the right level of rigor and discipline and structure, but is still simple enough to arrive at a good quality decision at the end. So a lot of my asset management background, I'm very active in the PMAC community, which is in Canada. It's kind of Canada's version of the SMRP, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm currently Calgary chapter president, and I'm also involved in the Society of Decision Professionals. So mashing up asset management, the kind of holistic and strategic variety geared towards leaders and decision making, with the actual formal decision making practice, I've found, I've kind of concluded that the key to operational excellence, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily in the data and analytics. It's not necessarily in the business processes, not necessarily in the documentation. Those are all perhaps necessary, but insufficient. You need to be good at organizational decision making, because that's where a lot of that value leakage stems from, and it happens to be in a lot of the asset strategy and planning stuff, which is a little bit longer term than the day-to-day operations of maintenance.
So is that possible absent those other elements, though, that you reference? Meaning to say, if we don't have those other things in place with our maintenance management processes, would we still, absent that, be okay?
You need to execute, right?
Yeah.
But I follow this acronym called DICDAR, DIKDAR. So Data, Information, Knowledge, Decision, Action, Result. It's an adaptation of DIDAR from quality or data quality management, but we add the knowledge in there. So we like to say data informs decisions, right? Which is kind of true, but we actually don't make decisions based on data. We take data and we add technical context to it, and that gets you information. That's the analytics part. Mm-hmm. Could be a trend, could be comparing against some type of acceptance criteria, whatever. Information's great, but still not actionable in terms of decision, because you haven't put any business context to it. Value at stake.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's where the K comes in. So what I've found, especially those organizations who've made substantial investments into the data and analytics and data lakes and all this data quality management stuff, which is all fine, well, and good, but a lot of these organizations are still not much better at the actual conversion of knowledge to quality decisions. And in fact, if you look at the activities that we end up doing and back up and say, where's the decision that belongs with our decision or agreement to do this? It's often not present. Like it's just vapor. Like data informs decisions, or sometimes experience, right? but we don't do a great job of recording our decisions and the rationale for them, and test, track to actions and results. That feed forward and feedback loop is very weak, and there's reasons for that.
I'm curious, when you say that, how critically important is it when we're in an organization maybe that's gone through certain changes, people leave, people come in, they've been acquired, whatever it might be, right? Any of these different variables. How important is it to know when we're assessing our organization and we see something and we're thinking, why the heck was this decision made in the first place? Is that not in itself similar to the kind of tribal knowledge we're always trying to capture about our maintenance processes?
Sure.
In how, if we don't know why the decision was made, we might be about to make a terrible decision.
Yeah.
Have you got any examples of that?
So your question is about the use of tribal knowledge?
No, it's more about if we don't have something that tells us why we made a certain decision,
right,
and we're now coming, we're latent to that.
Yeah.
It happened 2-3 years ago. They made a great decision, and it took a while to actually get that decision to produce the value that it was supposed to produce, or protect the value that it was supposed to protect. That's why the decision was made.
Sure.
But now we've lost the various champions, and we have no documentation. We have no rationale behind that.
Yeah.
Could it not set us, whoever that might be, up to make a terrible decision because they don't know that they're about to change something?
Yeah,
like
if we don't maintain that institutional knowledge and as a learning organization, if we lose that, we very much could make mistakes. But you started this by saying it's a quality decision, and if you have a quality decision and a positive outcome, that's all good. We want more of those, right? Nobody's going to be perfect, right? And there's some sensitivities around being transparent with our decision making and showing the decisions that are made and how we made them, right? And look, I'm sensitive to that as well. But we talk a good game about accountability, but you can't have true accountability without stark transparency. So, it does take kind of courageous leaders and progressive organizations who really want to improve in order to kind of record and track their decisions. But those that do will learn from them, right? And the other aspect, though, what about the good decisions with poor outcomes, right? I mean, we obviously don't want bad decisions and bad outcomes. That's the worst, right?
Right.
But when we make good decisions but have bad outcomes, which can happen, right? Because the knowledge that we're using to make the decision is never perfect. And so we have to use and judge the knowledge that we have with our uncertainty in that knowledge to actually make a quality decision. But if you kind of meet the standard of a quality decision, and there's not rules, but there's it's well established what a quality decision means. The organization needs to allow and be have allowances for quality decisions with poor outcomes. To some extent, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be a safe place, if you will, to have poor outcomes sometimes. But you don't want to have that happen all the time.
Right. Well, the thing I keep, you see me I'm doing my whatever thinking, and I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you this, because I think this is a good kind of question to ask as we kind of roll down, because I think a lot of people need to see your entire presentation. We don't want to give away the castle here, but you talked about transparency, and it reminded me of a couple of things. One, I think transparency is really empowering for the entire organization, even if through that transparency there's ugly things that we don't like, because when we know these things, we can shape our own behaviors as to what we have to do, what's in front of us at all levels of the organization. I don't even care who it is. I think that's good. But there is a truth or kind of reality that there's high risk in that type of transparency. And I always wonder, what are the leaders in the boardroom, what are they really afraid of? And I'll tie this to something. Sure. I once had an organizational leader talk about, we're going to use radical transparency
Oh my.
And it turned out it was the exact opposite.
Oh, yeah,
It was said, but not even close to being done.
Oh, okay.
How common is
so
this?
it was talked about but not achieved? Or did the
No.
pendulum actually swing too far the other way?
It was bullshit.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. I've kind of seen aspects of that as well. I don't know. I think it's important to just create trust through, just doing it and showing that, look, we're going to make more better decisions by doing this than we used to, even if some of our decisions come out bad, right? Because guess what? We make poor decisions and have poor outcomes today.
Yeah.
Right? That we're not even looking at the causes. And, our decision makers aren't necessarily incentivized to look backwards either. Right? So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
You did,
I think it's a way to build trust. But
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, starting out, but look, you can start out very technical, right? And apply it to those questions or those problems that aren't sticky people related, right? This can work for those as well, but I understand the sensitivity, and maybe you need to ease into it and just do it based on the cost, performance, and risk of the assets, right?
And I think I love this whole concept, but with the transparency part, I think for me it was, if there's intentionality behind doing that, being transparent, and then making these decisions and potentially the risk of that decision being wrong, but being transparent about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of organizations are far more fearful about real transparency, because if people know the truth, some of them are going to, yep, I'm not into this, and that can cause a lot of disruption and damage. However, I think a lot of us know that transparency is the ultimate way forward, but it requires fearlessness.
I agree with you, right? Like it's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable, but guess what? I kind of equate it to being a general manager of a sports club.
Okay.
Could be a general manager of a baseball team, a hockey team. I'm from Canada, so I choose hockey usually.
Hockey.
But a lot of their decisions as general managers in terms of who they sign as free agents, who they trade, who they draft. A lot of those decisions are very public and transparent, right? There's lots of armchair quarterbacks. I'm mixing my sports here, but who take great sport in criticizing and giving credit as well. So I think there's a lot. I think that's an analog. Like, I think we need to be comfortable, and if we want to talk a good game about accountability, I think you need to be able to have the thick skin in order to be able to kind of rest on your laurels. The opposite of transparency is obfuscation.
Yes.
Right? And okay, that's a way of managing too, but that's when I look at decision making in organizations, and I've learned to do this because I was surprised. Part of my eureka moment was realizing just how fixated everyone in our organization is on tasks. There's stuff to be done, and there's lots of people there who, hey, tell me what to do, I will execute, I will deliver, and we need those people.
Sure.
Right? But we also need the people who are going to sit back and see, think, and decide, right? And using the right level of rigor. Not sure where I was going with that.
Well, I think we were coming up with some things that I like to ask about, things where I suddenly catch a term and I'm trying to understand the context and not necessarily trying to be right. And I wanted to explore that little topic that I think is a big topic on transparency. But with everything, kind of what you're talking about, I think it's a really interesting take on how we're looking at asset management, EAM. There's so many ways we could spin out. So we're good here because I think people can start to think about everything we've talked about. And of course, when you give your presentation, there's going to be some good stuff that comes out of that. So I'm hoping some of the attendees can maybe come over here and unpack that a little bit with me.
Yeah,
and
no,
you
that'd
and
be
I.
great,
Maybe.
and I'd appreciate the feedback. I mean, look, we've talked about specifically the decision-making piece of it, but truly what I'm kind of offering is an asset management system for the organization, but one that's kind of designed to be a tool set for the leadership, right? And decision-making is part of that, right? But it includes what I call a value network map, which is kind of a new and novel dashboard. Look, our leaders have no shortage of dashboards, but this one's a little bit different, right? And it kind of shows everything that's going on in the organization, kind of a causal effect, and it answers two questions: are we doing what we said we'd do, and are we getting the results we desired, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a series of leading, lagging, connecting KPIs that go all the way from our practices, like maintenance, and all the way through to those final business results that our senior leaders are delivering, are supposed to deliver for our stakeholders.
Yeah.
Another big feature of it is governance. So the job to be done for leaders is to, like I said, make those direct decisions to allocate the resources. But, above that, they're there to manage, lead, and govern the organization, right? And the governance piece is important because that's where we have the management review. That's where we have, which includes the performance piece. It's where we have audit and assurance to make sure we're meeting our obligations. And it's also where we have our continuous improvement and innovation, right? Of not just the practices and the people, process, technology, but of the asset management system itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, within there's a bunch of operational practices, which include, some of those 40. I've got kind of what I call a starter kit that is enough to get going. And it doesn't matter where you start, but there's operational strategy deployment. So taking those strategic objectives at kind of the C-suite level, above operations, and then translating them down through the operations organization to the front line. And that's harder than it seems, is to keep that alignment as those strategies and objectives and plans get developed. But that's often a place where we kind of fall down is that strategy deployment piece. In addition to that, there's operational risk management. And then a little bit of reliability stuff. There's asset health and condition management, which informs asset performance management, and then asset investment planning, which is kind of our capital planning. And all those, and of course, each one of those is very decision intensive. So it's kind of underpinned by that decision intelligence framework. Because they're all decision intensive, and it's all in the kind of asset planning, strategy and planning parts of the ISO standard.
Yeah, yeah. So, a couple of things. Number one, I want to do a real brief run through on the first timer CMMS radio fun question segment. So we'll knock that out quick.
Okay.
First question: what is your favorite music?
Oh, well, definitely rock.
All right.
A big Kiss fan from back in the day.
I got a Kiss shirt up in my hotel room as
right
we
now?
speak. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Fun question number 2. What is your favorite sport or hobby? I think we already know, and it doesn't matter if you play it.
Hockey is, and I still play, and I'm a goalie, and nice. I'm an aged beer league goalie, so my hips and my knees absolutely hate me. But it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Here's the big one. There's no wrong answers here.
Oh.
What is your philosophy, perspective, opinion, anything at all when it comes to this concept of work-life balance?
Oh, my. I think work-life balance, I think you need to be able to energize yourself, right? So I don't know that you need to seek a line in it. I mean, you need to be you, and you need to, love and support the people that you love, both at, work and on the family front, and friends. But you got to do things that energize yourself, right? And some things we do kind of sap our energy, and other things energize us.
Yeah.
So finding that right mix so that we're always on the positive side of the we always got deposits in the bank is always nice.
Nice. I love it. Last thing, I want to know how people should get in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can contact me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. But Paul at coam.com is my email, and you can get me there too.
Awesome. When I produce this, I'll put some links and try to help people out to get in touch with you. Thank you, Paul, for being here with me on CMMS Radio, live from Streamline Asset Management User Conference in Greenville, South Carolina.
Thanks, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.